If you watched my last video, you might feel like you could never tell people to pay you in a lump sum, let alone per minute rates. And this is because you might not know what your music is worth. Unfortunately, I'm gonna tell you right now that I don't know how much your music is worth either. When starting out, finding this slowly really helped me feel vastly more confident about what I can do, and it made me feel more confident in both myself and my business. So, how do you figure your numbers out? I'm sad to say that the answer is, well, a little scary. You see, it all comes down to negotiation. In response to giving a quote and then leaving the door open so that the dev doesn't leave the conversation and then actually getting something back from them, they might still tell you that they can't afford your prices. But this is some raw data that we can use to find out our value. I do want to preface this with that projects can be budget dependent, and you know your own needs better than I do. But quickly, you'll see over time that you'll be able to figure out your numbers relatively easily. So say that you quote $10,000 for an entire project, and that it's your first project even. I'm just throwing numbers out here for examples. The dev wants 20 minutes of music, and they approve you right away. Awesome. So now divide 10,000 by 20. You get $500. Look at that. There's a per minute rate. It shows you that you're worth this much. However, this really isn't exactly accurate in most cases. You should probably bump this number up a little bit, so that over time you're more easily able to raise your rates as you network with higher quality devs. So tack on, let's say, another 200 to that. And let's call your per minute rate $700. And just remember that you're shooting for per project fees. But you also need to remember that this is a one-off example with one dev, and every team you work with is going to have different circumstances. Now, the thing is, you want to be negotiated down. If you aren't being negotiated down, you're probably charging too little. This is really how you find out what your value is as a composer and around where your rate should be right now. Being negotiated down is not an insult, but it's definitely scary. It never gets easier sending off a quote, because when you do, you don't know if you'll actually be accepted or not. So say that on a second project with a different dev, they also want 20 minutes of music, and you do the same thing. You charge $10,000, and you let them know that you're open to negotiation if the numbers seem off. And they respond with, hey, sorry, we actually can't afford that, but we really do want to work with you. We would feel really more comfortable about $7,000. Does that work? Now, the ball is back in your court again at this point. If this is below your threshold, feel free to walk away. If it's still above your threshold, however, you now have two options. You can say, yes, that works for me, or you can counteroffer. Clients aren't likely to run from counteroffers in my experience. Responding with something like, would it be possible to do $7,500 instead, is not a bad choice, and in my experience, the chances of losing the gig are relatively low. So now say that the dev does accept this $7,500. Divide $7,500 by 20. You get $375. Average this out with the 500 from before, and you get roughly around 440. I'd go on to make this 450 just to keep things even, but now this tells you that your music is worth roughly 450 a minute. Again, what I'd personally say here is to tack more on top of this. It's important to get yourself in the mindset that you are a professional worth what you're worth. So putting another 200 on top of this, you've now found out that you're worth $650 per minute. You won't necessarily charge these rates because, at least for me, I'd still be going after the flat fees. The important thing really is to figure out something that works for you, because really, you need to get paid, you need to make a living, and helping devs out on their projects at the same time is really awesome. Budgets are very dependent, and I personally feel like you should base how much you charge based off of your current situation and what you might need for living at the bare minimum. My current threshold at the bare minimum is, will this project allow me to make at least 2 times as much as I need to live for the amount of time this project takes? My per minute rates are a tool that I can use to charge what I'm worth, find projects, and receive pay that I can more than live on in my career. And really, find what works for you. What this comes down to is everyone deserves to be paid. Everyone deserves to live. Everyone deserves to save. And everyone deserves to grow. That includes you. Thanks for stopping by today. If you learned something, I would greatly appreciate a like, a comment, or even a subscribe. I also do video essays on this channel as well. You can see one right here about music history, opium, and Mario. I think it's pretty interesting myself, so I'd really love if you checked it out. Keep it real, everyone, and I'll see you next time.